Right, so US arms sales to Israel, the single biggest supplier of military equipment and aid to Benjamin Netanyahu's genocidal state, have continued come what may, come all the accusations, evidence of Israeli atrocity being committed in Gaza, a death toll that keeps climbing, and we're told that if Netanyahu goes into Rafah and uses US weaponry, that arms sales from the US will have to end. Biden has said all of this. Well, this week has seen some appalling scenes in Rafah where most of the Gaza population lie trapped. £2,000 bombs being dropped on literal tents. Rafah, its population swollen far beyond the numbers of people it was meant to house, having doubled in size thanks to a tent city having built up alongside it. Netanyahu called bombing these tents a tragic mistake. But if you believe that, then you'll believe anything. However, now we have proof that US weapons were used on that tent city in Rafah. US weapons have been used in Rafah. So, Joe Biden, are you going to stop the arms sales? I won't hold my breath, though.
Been very clear with Israel on the imperative in this instance, as in other instances, to immediately investigate and determine exactly what happened and why it happened. And if accountability is necessary, to make sure that there is accountability. I can't tell you, as we meet here this evening, what weapons were used or how they were used. All of that needs to be the product of a deliberate but also fast investigation, and we'll await the results.
Right, so that was US Secretary of State Antony Blinken denying all knowledge of US munitions having been used on the tent city in Rafah. An investigation will be needed despite multiple sources having reported that US munitions were used by Israel in Rafah, that the people that have been killed this week mean the US have even more blood on its hands, and few have more of it given their incredible levels of sycophancy towards Israel than the likes of Blinken and Biden, who frankly, in Blinken's case certainly, is probably waiting not so much for an independent investigation, but for Israel to tell them who did it instead. He did claim Israel had very credible evidence that UNRWA, for example, had been infiltrated by Hamas after all, despite that evidence never having ever actually materialised. He's way past the point of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, this guy. The scenes in Rafah this week have been amongst the very worst of the Gaza genocide so far, and this was always the risk with so many people trapped so closely together there now, that the moment all of those tanks, all of those Israeli forces parked on Rafah's lawn, so to speak, went in with intent to do harm, all in the name of getting Hamas, of course, just like always, the casualty rate was always going to be severe amongst civilians. Some of the images so awful even describing them in this video would probably see it taken down. But if you've been following the story of not one mistake by Netanyahu attacking Rafah this week, but two mistakes, in and of themselves, actions Genocide Joe Biden had allegedly warned Netanyahu against carrying out, then you will be fully aware of the sort of thing I'm alluding to. Images that will define what Israel is doing here in the history books in the decades to come, I'm sure. And now, when condemning all of those world leaders intent on shielding Israel from being held to account. These are mistakes, of course, we're told. Tragic, inadvertent. How could we know with all these tanks and soldiers in the middle of Rafah that something could possibly go wrong? It's not an invasion, honest gov. It's an innocent mistake. We don't know how this could have happened. Beats us, but we will get to the bottom of it, rest assured. No doubt that is the kind of thing the US might be getting told by Israeli spokespeople, and people like Antony Blinken might be saying things like, "Oh, phew, thank God for that. Glad you're getting to the bottom of it, just as another mistake happens, I suppose." That is how it works now, right? I think we've all cottoned on to that by now, haven't we? I'm sure the US media channels will have someone philosophising over all of this. What makes an invasion? When does an assembly of troops become an invasion when, regardless of what these talking heads come up with, innocent people are still dead because something happened that shouldn't have? So this attack on Rafah that has exposed scenes of horrendous loss of life and carnage, graphic images we'll never forget, frankly, have been revealed to have been as a result of Israel using US-manufactured weaponry on the tent city of Gaza. I'm not entertaining this idea of a mistake. Israel keep making such mistakes. There's too many mistakes for them to be mistakes. And like everything else that comes out of Netanyahu's mouth or one of his ministers or one of his Spocks, it's almost certainly a lie. How do we know they were US made? Well, because a CNN investigation has identified the munitions involved. Images that had come from the scene. CNN were able to geolocate where these photos were taken, basically identifying a given geographical location based on metadata from a digital photograph of a given scene, for example, or an IP address or GPS data or other forms of data which enable a searcher to pinpoint the exact location that photograph, that image came from. CNN did this and managed to identify there the tail portion of a US-made missile, thus proving US munitions were used in this incident. And here's an excerpt explaining all of that. CNN geolocated videos showing tents in flames in the aftermath of the strike on the camp for internally displaced people known as Kuwait Peace Camp 1. In videos shared on social media, which CNN geolocated to the same scene by matching details including the camp's entrance sign and the tiles on the ground, the tail of a US-made GBU-39 small diameter bomb, SDB, is visible, according to 4 explosive weapons experts who reviewed the video for CNN. The GBU-39, which is manufactured by Boeing, is a high-precision munition designed to attack strategically important point targets and result in low collateral damage, explosive weapons Chris Cobb-Smith told CNN Tuesday. However, using any munition, even of this size, will always incur risks in a densely populated area, said Cobb-Smith, who is also a former British Army artillery officer. Trevor Ball, a former US Army senior explosive ordnance disposal team member, who also identified the fragment as being from a GBU-39, explained to CNN how he drew his conclusion. The warhead portion of the munition is distinct, and the guidance and wing section is extremely unique compared to other munitions. Guidance and wing sections of munitions are often the remnants left over even after a munition detonates. I saw the tail actuation section and instantly knew it was one of the SDB/GBU-39 variants. So that pretty much places beyond doubt that this was US-made munitions then. Biden swore down any attack on Rafah using US weaponry would be a red line. So now he's going to stop arming Israel, right? No, wrong. His red lines apparently shift just like his morals do. 45 people were killed in this incident. Horrible graphic images I keep referring to, mainly because I can't get the images out of my head. I am only human after all. His weapons were used, and this apparently changes nothing. The red line moves, so it no longer gets crossed, and that, of course, now sends a message to Benjamin Netanyahu that he can get away with doing this again and again and again, because apparently it doesn't actually cross any US red lines. I'm sure he very much appreciates that. People were incinerated in what they were told was a safe zone, but no red line has been crossed. And this, of course, has happened not once but twice. Tragic mistakes, of course. That isn't a mistake. That's intentional. Stop taking the world for fools. The red line for Genocide Joe, though, is apparently a full-scale assault on Rafah now. So in theory, Netanyahu can keep making these tragic mistakes as long as he doesn't, what, kill everyone then? How many exactly can he get away with killing? More than 45, clearly. How big of an invasion is considered a full-scale invasion here now? What is the measure, Genocide Joe? Do tell us. It is making allowances for genocidal actions by constantly shifting the boundaries as to how much death and destruction is deemed acceptable when the answer should be none at all. Now it appears to be the case that as long as civilian casualties are minimised, though the figure in question, the red line, is unknown, using US ordnance is absolutely fine, even in densely populated civilian areas where the only defence people have is a ruddy tent. Stop arming Israel now. End of story. Not only is Biden looking like a complete sap in his refusal to stop arming Israel, moving his red lines as they literally blow people up in tents, they are utterly humiliating him too. Whilst he carries on arming Israel, he can't get aid in through the crossings because Israel won't let him. Everything is going Israel's way in that regard as well. So, of course, he then decided to build that absurd pier on the Gaza coast instead, which less than 2 weeks after completion just broke up in a storm. I wish that was the peak of his humiliation on that score, but it actually gets worse from there. Do check out this video recommendation to find out all the details of that story. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.